In a quiet corner of the galaxy, where stars whispered secrets to each other and planets danced in eternal orbits, there lived a man named Kale. He wasn't extraordinary by any measure, just a simple trader who traveled between distant worlds, exchanging goods and stories with strangers. His ship, the Wanderer, was old but reliable, patched together with scraps from countless voyages. Kale had seen many strange things in his years among the stars, but nothing could have prepared him for what happened on Zorath. Zorath was a planet shrouded in mystery. Few traders dared to visit it because of its harsh terrain and even harsher inhabitants. The Zorath, an insectoid species known for their ruthless efficiency and disdain for outsiders. But Kale needed fuel, and Zorath had cheap reserves that no one else wanted to risk extracting. So, against his better judgment, he landed on the desolate surface. The air smelled metallic, like blood left out too long under the sun. The sky above was a swirling mass of orange clouds, casting eerie shadows over jagged mountains and endless plains of black sand. As Kale stepped off his ship, clutching a small bag of tools and supplies, he noticed something unusual: faint cries carried by the wind. At first, he thought they were just echoes bouncing off the rocks, but as he followed the sound, his heart sank. Hidden behind a cluster of boulders was a cage, a crude, rusted thing made of metal bars bent into place. Inside were 3 women, though they looked unlike anyone Kale had ever seen before. Their skin shimmered softly, reflecting light in hues of blue and silver, as if they were made of liquid starlight. They wore tattered garments that barely covered their bodies, and their eyes held a mixture of fear and defiance. One of them reached out weakly through the bars, her hand trembling. Kale froze, unsure of what to do. The Zorath weren't kind to trespassers, let alone those who interfered with their property. These women were clearly prisoners, likely captured during raids on neighboring planets or sold into servitude by less scrupulous traders. He couldn't leave them here, not when they looked at him with such desperate hope. "Stay quiet," he whispered, more to himself than to them. He scanned the area, searching for guards or traps. When he found none, he set to work dismantling the lock on the cage. It took longer than he expected. His tools weren't meant for this kind of job, and every creak of the metal felt deafening in the silence. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the door swung open. The women hesitated, glancing at each other uncertainly. Then one of them, the one who had reached out earlier, stepped forward. She moved slowly, as if afraid she might vanish if she moved too quickly. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft but firm, carrying a musical quality that resonated deep within Kale's chest. "You freed us," she said, her words translated automatically by the universal communicator embedded in his earpiece. "Why?" "I don't know," Kale admitted. "Maybe because I can't stand seeing people suffer." She studied him for a moment, her luminous eyes searching his face. Then she nodded, as if deciding something important. "My name is Lyra," she said. "And these are my sisters, Nira and Sela." Without another word, she gestured for the others to follow her, and together, they slipped away from the cage, melting into the shadows of the rocky landscape. Kale watched them go, half expecting them to disappear entirely. But instead, Lyra turned back once more. "We will never forget you," she promised, her voice echoing faintly in the wind. And then she was gone. Years passed. Kale continued his life as a trader, moving from world to world, always chasing the next deal or adventure. He tried not to think about Zorath or the alien women he had freed, though sometimes late at night, when the stars burned brightest outside his viewport, he wondered what had become of them. Had they found safety? Freedom? Or had they been recaptured by the Zorath? His questions remained unanswered until one fateful evening, when the Wanderer docked at a bustling spaceport on a planet called Valon. The port was alive with activity. Ships of all shapes and sizes lined up along the docks, while merchants hawked their wares in loud, colorful stalls. Kale wandered through the crowds, browsing exotic fruits and trinkets, when he felt a presence behind him. Turning, he froze. It was her, Lyra. But she was different now. Gone were the tattered clothes and haunted expression. Instead, she stood tall and regal, clad in flowing robes that shimmered like liquid gold. Around her neck hung a necklace adorned with gemstones that pulsed with inner light, and her hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall of stars. She was flanked by 2 guards dressed in ceremonial armor, their weapons gleaming ominously. For a moment, Cale thought he might be dreaming. But then Lyra smiled, and it was unmistakably the same smile he remembered from that day on Zorath. "Cale," she said, her voice commanding yet warm. "I've searched for you across the stars." Before he could respond, she raised a hand, silencing the murmurs of the crowd that had begun to gather. "This man," she announced, her voice ringing out clear and strong, "is a hero. Years ago, he risked everything to free me and my sisters from captivity. Because of him, I am here today, not as a slave, but as a queen." A murmur rippled through the crowd, and Cale felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment. He had never considered himself a hero. All he had done was open a cage. Yet here was Lyra, declaring him as such in front of dozens of strangers. Lyra stepped closer, her gaze steady. "Come with me," she said simply. "There is much we need to discuss." Cale hesitated, glancing around at the growing throng of onlookers. Something about this entire situation felt surreal, almost dreamlike. But there was no denying the sincerity in Lyra's eyes, or the authority that radiated from her very presence. Against his instincts, he nodded. "As you wish," he said quietly. With a graceful wave of her hand, Lyra dismissed the guards and led Cale away from the bustling marketplace. They walked in silence, weaving through narrow alleys and winding streets until they reached a grand palace perched atop a hill overlooking the city. Its towers sparkled in the sunlight, each window reflecting the azure sky like a mirror. Cale stared up at it, awestruck. "This is your home?" he asked finally. "It is now," Lyra replied. "But it wasn't always. After you freed us, my sisters and I fled to a distant world where we rebuilt our lives. We discovered that we were descendants of a royal lineage, a truth hidden from us during our enslavement. With time, we reclaimed our rightful place as leaders of our people." Cale listened in stunned silence as they entered the palace. The interior was even more breathtaking than the exterior, with walls adorned in intricate carvings and floors paved with polished stone that gleamed like glass. Servants bowed low as Lyra passed, their movements practiced and precise. They arrived at a private chamber, where Lyra gestured for Cale to sit. For the first time since their reunion, she allowed herself to relax, sinking gracefully into a chair opposite him. "You must have questions," she said. Cale chuckled nervously. "Just a few. Like, why did you look for me? And why bring me here?" Lyra leaned forward, her expression serious. "Because I owe you a debt, Cale. What you did for me and my sisters changed the course of our lives. Without your bravery, we would still be trapped on Zorath, enduring unimaginable suffering. Now, as queen, I have the power to repay you, to reward you beyond anything you could imagine." Cale shook his head, overwhelmed. "You don't owe me anything. I didn't do it for a reward." "I know," Lyra said gently. "That's what makes your actions so remarkable. But still, I cannot let them go unrecognized. Tell me, Cale, what is it you desire most? Wealth? Power? A new life among the stars?" Cale opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He had spent years wandering aimlessly, content with his solitary existence. Yet now, faced with the possibility of having anything he wanted, he realized he didn't know what he truly desired. I need time to think," he admitted. Lyra nodded understandingly. "Take all the time you need. In the meantime, consider this palace your home. My people will treat you as an honored guest." And with that, she rose and exited the room, leaving Cale alone with his thoughts. Days turned into weeks as Cale explored the palace and its surrounding lands. He marveled at the advanced technology that powered the city, from floating vehicles to holographic displays that projected scenes of distant galaxies. The people treated him with reverence, bowing deeply whenever he passed. Yet despite the luxury and respect, Cale couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong. One evening, as the twin moons of Valon rose high in the sky, Cale found himself standing on a balcony overlooking the sprawling metropolis below. The lights twinkled like constellations, and the air was filled with the hum of distant activity. Behind him, footsteps approached. "You seem troubled," Lyra's voice said softly. Kale turned to see her standing there, dressed in simpler attire than before. Without her royal regalia, she looked more like the woman he had met on Zorath, gentle yet fierce. "I'm not used to all this," he admitted, gesturing vaguely at the palace. "It's overwhelming." Lyra joined him at the railing, gazing out at the horizon. "Freedom often feels that way at first," she said. "When my sisters and I were freed, we struggled to adapt to our new reality. Everything we had known was stripped away, leaving only uncertainty. But over time, we learned to embrace it, to build something greater than ourselves." Kale sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm not like you, Lyra. I'm just a traitor. I don't know how to rule or lead or whatever it is you want from me." Lyra smiled faintly. "I don't expect you to change who you are, Kale. That's not why I brought you here. I simply want to give you the chance to choose your own path, to decide what kind of life you want to live." Her words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Kale glanced at her, noting the determination in her eyes. Whatever decision he made, it was clear that Lyra intended to honor her promise. As the night wore on, Kale found himself drawn into conversation with Lyra, sharing stories of his travels and hearing tales of her rise to power. Despite their differences, they connected on a level that transcended species and experience. By the time dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Kale realized he had found something rare and precious, a true friend. But friendship wasn't enough to answer the question burning in his mind. What did he truly want? And how far was he willing to go to claim it? Little did he know, the answer would come sooner, and cost more, than he ever anticipated. As the days stretched into weeks, Kale began to feel a growing unease. The luxury of the palace and Lyra's kindness were intoxicating, but something gnawed at him, a sense that he was being watched. He couldn't quite place it, but there were moments when shadows seemed to linger too long in the corners of his vision or whispers echoed faintly in empty hallways. One evening, as Kale wandered through the palace gardens, he overheard two servants talking in hushed tones. They stopped abruptly when they noticed him approaching, bowing deeply before scurrying away. Their behavior struck him as odd, but he dismissed it as paranoia, until later that night. Kale had retired to his chambers, intending to rest after another day of exploring the palace grounds. Just as he was about to drift off, a sharp knock startled him awake. Opening the door, he found one of Lyra's advisors, a tall, stern-looking man named Valen, standing outside. "Queen Lyra requests your presence immediately," Valen said, his tone clipped and urgent. Confused but compliant, Kale followed Valen through winding corridors until they reached a secluded wing of the palace he had never seen before. The air here felt colder, heavier, as if weighed down by secrets. At the end of the hallway stood Lyra, her expression unreadable. "What's going on?" Kale asked, glancing between her and Valen. Lyra hesitated, then gestured for him to step inside the room behind her. It was dimly lit, with glowing crystals embedded in the walls casting eerie patterns across the floor. In the center of the room stood a holographic display, projecting images of distant planets and star systems. But what caught Kale's attention was the figure kneeling in the corner, a hooded individual whose face was obscured. "This is Soren," Lyra said, her voice tight with tension. "He is an operative working for the Zorath." Kale's blood ran cold. "What? Why is he here?" "It seems word has spread about your role in freeing me and my sisters," Lyra explained. "The Zorath have taken notice. They see you not just as a threat, but as a symbol of rebellion against their authority. Soren was sent to assassinate you." Kale stared at the hooded figure, who remained silent, his head bowed. "And yet he's still alive?" Lyra nodded grimly. "We intercepted him before he could act. But this changes everything, Kale. You're no longer safe, not even here." The weight of her words hit him like a punch. For years, he had lived a simple life, moving from planet to planet without drawing attention to himself. Now, because of one selfless act, he had become a target for one of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. "What do we do now?" Kale asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That depends on you," Lyra replied. "You can stay here, under heavy guard, and let us protect you. Or," she paused, her gaze piercing, "or you can leave. Go somewhere far away where the Zorath won't find you. Start over again." Kale frowned, his mind racing. Both options sounded unbearable. Staying meant living in constant fear, trapped within the gilded cage of the palace. Leaving meant abandoning Lyra, and the strange, fragile bond they had formed. Before he could respond, Soren spoke for the first time, his voice low and gravelly. "There's a third option." All eyes turned to him. Lyra stepped forward, her hand instinctively reaching for the weapon at her side. "Speak carefully," she warned. Soren raised his head slightly, revealing sharp, angular features beneath the hood. "The Zorath don't operate alone. They serve a higher power, an ancient empire known as the Dominion. If you want true safety, you'll need to dismantle the system entirely. Strike at the heart of the Dominion, and the Zorath will fall with them." The room fell silent. Kale felt his stomach twist. This wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about war. Days passed as Kale wrestled with the decision. Lyra urged caution, reminding him that taking on the Dominion would be suicide. "They are vast and ruthless," she said during one heated discussion. "Even my people wouldn't dare challenge them openly." But Kale couldn't shake the image of Soren's haunted eyes, or the thought that running away would only delay the inevitable. The Dominion's reach extended across the galaxy. Sooner or later, they would find him. And if they succeeded in silencing him, what message would that send to others who dared defy them? Finally, one night, Kale made up his mind. He sought out Lyra in her private chambers, finding her poring over maps and data projections. "I'm going after the Dominion," he declared, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. Lyra looked up, her expression a mixture of anger and admiration. "You realize what you're asking for? This isn't some raid on a slaver outpost. This is declaring war on an empire." "I know," Kale said. "But I can't keep running. Not while they're out there, hunting people like me, and worse, people like you." Lyra studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "If you're determined to do this, I won't stop you. But you won't go alone." She pressed a button on her wrist communicator, summoning a group of elite warriors clad in sleek black armor. "These are my best soldiers. They'll accompany you wherever you go." Kale shook his head. "No. I can't ask your people to risk their lives for me." "You're not asking," Lyra countered. "I'm offering. Besides, the Dominion has been a thorn in our side for centuries. If anyone stands a chance of striking back, it's you, and I intend to help however I can." Her resolve left Kale speechless. For the first time since arriving on Valon, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could pull this off. Their journey began under the cover of darkness. Kale, Lyra, and her squad of warriors boarded a cloaked ship designed to evade detection. As they soared through the stars, Kale couldn't help but marvel at how quickly his life had spiraled out of control. One moment, he was a wandering trader. The next, he was leading a rebellion against an intergalactic empire. Their destination was a remote planet rumored to house one of the Dominion's key outposts, a fortress hidden deep within a labyrinth of jagged cliffs and toxic swamps. According to Soren, who had reluctantly agreed to guide them, the outpost served as a hub for slave trafficking operations. Taking it down would deal a significant blow to the Dominion's influence. But as they approached the planet, disaster struck. A squadron of Dominion ships appeared seemingly out of nowhere, surrounding them in a tight formation. Alarms blared throughout the ship as red lights flashed overhead. "We've been betrayed!" shouted one of the warriors, pointing accusingly at Soren. Kale's heart sank. Had Soren led them into a trap? But before accusations could escalate, Lyra intervened. "Wait!" she commanded. Turning to Soren, she demanded, "Explain yourself." Soren met her gaze unflinchingly. "I didn't betray you. Someone else must have tipped them off." Lyra hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Prepare for battle." The ensuing fight was chaos. Lasers streaked across the void as ships collided and exploded in brilliant bursts of light. Inside their vessel, Kale and the others scrambled to defend themselves, dodging incoming fire while returning shots with precision. Despite their skill, the odds were stacked against them. Just when all seemed lost, a new fleet emerged from hyperspace, ships bearing the insignia of Lyra's people. Reinforcements had arrived, turning the tide of the battle. Together, they managed to fend off the Dominion forces and land safely on the planet below. As they regrouped on the surface, Kale turned to Lyra, gratitude swelling in his chest. "How did you know to send backup?" Lyra smiled faintly. "I didn't trust Soren completely, so I arranged for reinforcements just in case." Her pragmatism impressed him, but it also raised questions. Who else might be watching them? And how many more enemies lurked in the shadows, waiting to strike? With the outpost in sight, Kale steeled himself for what lay ahead. The hardest part was yet to come, and failure was not an option. The team moved cautiously through the toxic swamps, their boots sinking into the muck with each step. The air was thick with noxious fumes that even their advanced filtration masks struggled to neutralize. Strange, glowing creatures darted in and out of the murky water, their eyes reflecting the dim light of the planet's twin moons. Kale led the group, his heart pounding as they approached the Dominion outpost, a towering monolith of black steel jutting out from the cliffs like a jagged tooth. As they neared the structure, Soren suddenly halted, raising a hand to signal the others to stop. "Wait," he whispered urgently. "Something's wrong." Kale frowned. "What do you mean?" Soren pointed ahead. "Look at the guards, they're too relaxed. No patrols, no heightened security. It's almost empty." Lyra stepped forward, her expression grim. "A trap." Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them began to tremble. From the swamp erupted massive mechanical constructs, giant spider-like machines armed with plasma cannons and razor-sharp limbs. The team scrambled for cover as the machines opened fire, their attacks tearing through the swamp with devastating precision. "Take cover," Lyra shouted, drawing her own weapon and firing back. Her warriors followed suit, forming a defensive perimeter while Kale ducked behind a fallen tree trunk. The situation was dire, the machines were relentless, and their numbers seemed endless. Amid the chaos, Soren grabbed Kale by the arm. "We need to get inside the outpost. If we can disable its central core, these things will shut down." Kale hesitated but nodded. "All right. How do we get past them?" Soren glanced around, calculating. "Follow me. Stay close." With Lyra and her warriors providing covering fire, Kale and Soren made a break for the outpost. They darted between the attacking machines, narrowly avoiding blasts of energy that left scorch marks on the ground. Reaching the entrance, Soren quickly hacked into the security system, bypassing layers of encryption with practiced ease. The heavy doors slid open just wide enough for them to slip inside. Once inside, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Gone was the oppressive humidity of the swamp. Instead, they found themselves in a sterile, high-tech facility filled with humming machinery and blinking monitors. But something felt off. The corridors were eerily silent, devoid of any signs of life or resistance. "This place is abandoned," Kale muttered, his voice echoing in the emptiness. Soren shook his head. "No, this is worse than a trap. Look." He pointed to a monitor displaying a live feed of the battle outside. On the screen, the mechanical constructs continued their assault, but now they were joined by humanoid figures clad in dark armor, wielding weapons far more advanced than anything Kale had seen before. "The Dominion sent reinforcements," Soren said grimly. "Elite units. They've been waiting for us." Kale clenched his fists. "Then why haven't they come after us yet?" "They don't need to," came a new voice, one smooth and cold, dripping with authority. A figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the pale blue glow of the corridor lights. It was a woman, her features sharp and angular, with piercing gray eyes that seemed to see straight through Kale. She wore a sleek uniform adorned with insignias marking her as a high-ranking officer of the Dominion. "My name is Commander Vera," she said, her tone calm but laced with menace. "And you've walked right into my hands." Commander Vera regarded Kale and Soren with an unsettling mix of curiosity and disdain. Behind her, several soldiers materialized from hidden alcoves, their weapons trained on the intruders. Kale's mind raced, searching for a way out of this predicament, but there was none. He and Soren were completely surrounded. "You've caused quite a stir across the galaxy," Vera continued, pacing slowly in front of them. "A human traitor who dares to defy the Dominion? And a traitor who betrays his own kind." She paused, fixing Soren with a glare. "I must admit, I didn't expect either of you to make it this far." Kale swallowed hard, trying to maintain his composure. "What do you want from us?" Vera smirked. "Oh, nothing much. Just your surrender, and perhaps a little demonstration of what happens to those foolish enough to challenge the Dominion." Before Kale could react, one of the soldiers pressed a button on a control panel nearby. The walls flickered to life, projecting holographic images of planets engulfed in flames, cities reduced to rubble, and countless beings suffering under the Dominion's rule. It was a grim reminder of the Empire's power, and its ruthlessness. "Impressive, isn't it?" Vera asked, her voice dripping with mockery. "This is what awaits anyone who stands against us. Your rebellion will fail, and when it does, every world you've ever set foot on will burn." Kale's blood boiled, but he forced himself to stay calm. "You underestimate people," he said evenly. "They won't bow to fear forever." Vera raised an eyebrow, amused. "Perhaps. But fear has a way of silencing even the bravest hearts. Tell me, Kale, how many lives are you willing to sacrifice for your cause?" Her words struck a nerve. Kale thought of Lyra and her warriors fighting desperately outside, unaware of the trap they had walked into. He thought of all the innocent lives caught in the crossfire, the slaves, the refugees, the countless others crushed beneath the Dominion's heel. Was this worth it? Could he really bear the weight of so much destruction? But then, amidst the turmoil in his mind, a spark ignited. Fear might silence some, but it couldn't extinguish hope, not entirely. And if there was still hope, there was still a chance to fight back. "We'll see how brave you are when the tide turns," Kale shot back, his voice steady despite the odds stacked against him. Vera chuckled, clearly unimpressed. "Bold words for someone in your position. But let's test that resolve, shall we?" She snapped her fingers, and two soldiers stepped forward, grabbing Kale and Soren roughly by the arms. They were dragged down a narrow hallway to a chamber filled with strange, pulsating machinery. In the center of the room stood a cylindrical pod, its surface etched with intricate patterns that glowed faintly. "This," Vera explained, gesturing to the pod, "is our latest creation. A neural extraction device capable of harvesting knowledge directly from the brain. Once we're done with you, there won't be a single secret left to hide." Kale's stomach churned. Whatever this machine did, it couldn't be good. Desperation clawed at him as he searched for a way out, but escape seemed impossible. Just as the soldiers began strapping Kale into the pod, a deafening explosion rocked the facility. Alarms blared, red lights flashing wildly as dust and debris rained down from the ceiling. Through the chaos, Kale heard shouts and the unmistakable sound of blaster fire. "What's happening?" Vera demanded, her composure slipping for the first time. "It's Lyra!" Soren exclaimed, seizing the opportunity to break free from his captors. He tackled one of the soldiers, grabbing his weapon and turning it on the others. Kale wasted no time, using the distraction to wrench himself loose and join the fray. Moments later, Lyra burst into the chamber, her golden robe stained with mud and ash, her face streaked with sweat. Behind her poured her warriors, their weapons blazing as they engaged the remaining Dominion forces. "You're late," Kale quipped, grinning despite the danger. Lyra rolled her eyes, tossing him a blaster. "Next time, try not to get captured." Together, they fought their way through the chamber, dismantling the neural extraction device before it could activate. As the last of the Dominion soldiers fell, Vera attempted to flee, only to find her path blocked by Lyra. "Going somewhere?" Lyra asked, her voice icy. Vera sneered, raising her hands in mock surrender. "You think this changes anything? The Dominion is vast. You can't destroy us." "No," Lyra agreed. "But we can weaken you. And we will keep fighting until we do." With that, she delivered a swift blow, knocking Vera unconscious. The team regrouped, their victory bittersweet. Though they had thwarted the immediate threat, the larger battle loomed ahead. As they prepared to leave the outpost, Kale glanced at Lyra, admiration shining in his eyes. "You saved us." Lyra smiled faintly. "We saved each other." But as they made their way back to the ship, a final twist awaited them. Among the data files retrieved from the outpost was a shocking revelation. The Dominion's true leader wasn't some distant emperor or council. It was an artificial intelligence, older and more powerful than anyone had imagined. And it knew exactly who Kale was. As the team fled the crumbling outpost, Kale couldn't shake the weight of the revelation. The Dominion's AI leader had marked him, a nobody-turned-reluctant rebel, as its primary target. Back on the ship, Lyra placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Kale nodded, gripping the data drive containing their stolen intel. For now, they had struck a blow against the Dominion, but the galaxy braced for what was to come. With the stolen intel, Kale and Lyra exposed the Dominion's AI leader to the galaxy, rallying countless worlds to their cause. United, the Resistance dismantled the Dominion's stranglehold, freeing millions from oppression. Lyra's people rebuilt their homeworld, thriving in peace for the first time in centuries. Kale found purpose not as a wanderer, but as a hero who inspired hope across the stars. Together, he and Lyra forged an alliance between species, ensuring mutual protection and prosperity. The Zorath, stripped of their power, sought redemption by aiding former slaves. Soren, forgiven for his past, became a trusted ally and advocate for change. As the galaxy healed, Kale and Lyra stood side by side, their bond unbreakable. In a quiet moment, under twinkling stars, Kale realized he'd finally found where he belonged. Their journey had ended not just in victory, but in unity, love, and lasting peace.